Recently, at one of our mentoring lunches for financial planning students, someone sat quietly in the room listening. At first, we assumed she was just one of the students, but afterwards, she introduced herself as a psychology professor from Utah Valley University who studies money and its impact on people's lives. She said she had goosebumps throughout the presentation because our conversation was not really about investments, it was about purpose, values, identity, and what wealth can actually do for you. That's an important part for business owners after an exit because after the company sells, it often raises this deeper, meaningful question. What kind of life am I building now? Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this podcast.
Glad to have you on another episode of Legacy Beyond Wealth. Ben George with Rob Shelton of Axio Wealth Management. And we're kind of continuing these conversations around, business owners exiting the business, selling the business, and kind of life after that sale, and some things you need to be thinking about from a planning perspective to make sure you're doing the most. And I know, this one's kind of focused on, why wealth is not the goal here, Rob. And you kind of telling the story about, this mentoring lunch. So what were you sharing that made this response happen so strongly?
Yeah, it was really about a conversation centered around something we believe so deeply here at Axio. And it's not just financial planning. It's about helping families unlock the financial freedom to live their best life. And it's really about being very intentional about your money. When people hear financial planning, they often think about investments, tax strategies, estate planning, insurance, retirement projections, and cash flow. And all those things matter, but we fail to recognize that they are much more just tools. And the real question is, what are those tools helping someone accomplish? What kind of life are they trying to create? What relationships matter most? And what impact can they do you want to be able to make? And, for a business owner after an exit, those questions become especially important. The wealth may suddenly be more liquid, more visible, and more complex, but the deeper question is still human in nature. What is the purpose or what is this wealth meant to be able to support, and what kind of life is it to be able to create?
Well, I think a lot of people think working with an advisor, you're really, talking numbers, and that's, a lot of the conversation that you're having. But why is this different than just simply talking about what the numbers are telling us?
Yeah, numbers are important. Don't want to, say that they're not, but they're not the final goal. Someone may say, I want to sell my business for a certain amount of money, or I want to preserve this for my family. These are valid financial goals, but the deeper question and is what makes those goals possible. Maybe it's more time with a spouse. Maybe it's being present with children or grandchildren. Maybe it's philanthropy. Maybe it's being a mentor to younger entrepreneurs. And maybe it is finally having the freedom to travel, serve, learn, or simply breathe after decades of pressure. And the financial goals should support that life goal. If we fail to uncover that life goal, we can never create a plan that's really going to help you live your best life.
Yeah, I think that's what's most important, right? You talk about it like you put in so much time and effort and made so many sacrifices along the way that you want to make sure you're getting the most out of this and making sure that you're able to kind of chase those goals that you have and accomplish them, eventually down the road. So what did that professor end up saying after that presentation, Rob?
Yeah, she was very professional. She waited till after all the students had a chance to come up and ask their questions. Then she kindly introduced herself and explained that she was a professor with a doctorate in psychology. And, she teaches courses about how you should have your money working for you and the psychological impacts it can have on people's lives. The one thing she said to me that was really interesting, she said, I'm Hawaiian. And she said, in Hawaiian, we have this term called chicken skin. And she said, we had chicken skin throughout the presentation. And I kind of looked at her weird and she said goosebumps. And, that really stayed with me because what she recognized was that we were not just talking about financial planning as a collection of products or strategies. We were talking about the human side of wealth. And money is so emotional. Every financial decision has a human story behind it, a fear, dream, responsibility, a value, a hope. And when someone sells a business, the technical questions are obvious. How should we proceed to invest the money? But how are the taxes owed? And what about the estate plan? And how much should be given? And how much can be spent? But underneath all those questions are these deeper ones. Who am I now? What do I want my days to look like? How do I want my family to experience this wealth? And what should I say yes to? What should I stop trying to care about, or baggage that I'm carrying? This is why financial planning after an exit has to be broader than just a straight balance sheet with financial questions.
I like that chicken skin. I might use that now at some point. That's a
Yeah.
really good description. Never heard that before, but that's really good. Well, I know. Look, when people are thinking about this, Rob, maybe as an outsider, you think, well, all right, you sold a business. This is going to be pretty easy, right? You get paid. Your life is pretty good now. You don't have anything to worry about. Not all the stress is gone, but a lot of times this is emotionally harder than people expect, isn't it?
It is. And for most business owners, the company is not just an asset. It really is their identity, their calendar, their purpose. It's their community that they've built over the years. And it's been a challenge that they've loved to be able to find solutions for. And it may have been the main place where they solved those problems, led people, made decisions, and felt extremely useful. So when the business is sold, they're just not transferring ownership. They're stepping away from a role that may have shaped their life for decades. And that can create a real sense of loss. People might, think, how am I going to be able to find my purpose, or who am I, and how do I find happiness? And of course, there can be tremendous gratitude, but gratitude and grief cannot exist at the same time. So you can be thankful for the outcome and still feel unsettled by the transition. And this is one of the things I wish more owners understood before the sale. The exit is not just a liquidity event, but it is a life event.
Well, then what separates those exits that people regret versus the ones they don't?
Yeah. So, the difference really is just the size of transaction. Owners who transition do things a little bit differently. First, they acknowledge that the exit is a life transition. And second, they slow down major decisions right after the sale. And third, they become intentional about the purpose and their calendar and who they want to be able to become. And fourth, they communicate thoughtfully with family. And last but not least, fifth, they build a coordinated planning process around the life they want to be able to have, not just what money they have now. So after a sale, every decision starts touching every other decision. And investing affects taxes, estate planning affects family communication, charitable giving affects cash flow, lifestyle choices affect long-term flexibility. And all of this is related. You think about it, and I hope it's okay to give a quick analogy. It's like a pond that's sitting out there that's like a clear glass, and you take a rock of this life event, selling a business, and you throw it in the pond, and you see the splash and all the ripple effects. What we really want to see is those ripple effects pushing you towards living your best life, not pulling you away from it.
Are you ready to unlock the freedom to live your best life? Schedule your no-cost 60-minute discovery meeting with our team today. During this session, we'll take the time to understand your family story and financial dreams. Together, we'll craft a personalized roadmap designed to help you achieve your goals. Let's explore how we can unlock the freedom for you and your family to thrive. Just click the link in the description of today's show to get started.
We've done a few videos now on this topic and just kind of this theme of exiting a business, Rob. And one of the things you kind of continue to kind of hammer home the point is that you don't want to rush through these major decisions right after the sale, but remind us again and talk about why that's so important to not move so quickly.
When emotions are high, it really means that a lot of oxygen is leaving our brain to make good, rational decisions. And that's why, so many things like Ponzi schemes or high pressured sales tactics try to get you so emotionally tied in because you don't make right decisions. And that period right after an exit can be so emotionally charged. There's so much excitement, relief, fatigue, pressure, guilt, boredom. And that combination can lead to decisions that are fast, but not always wise. So, it's going to be really important to not rush into things or jump into things or to agree to things or make major decisions before having a chance to be able to have what we'd call your North Star out there. And that North Star that's going to be guiding you is going to be what your ideal best life looks like. Again, we want those ripples to be working for you and towards you, and be very thoughtful about how we go about it, being very purposeful and proactive, not being reactive.
Yeah, that's always the goal, right? In planning, is being proactive to not to make sure that you're prepared for whatever happens, right? And I think about purpose and time when you exit a business, right? Because that's such a big part of being a business owner is you have that purpose every day when you wake up. You know what you're trying to do, what you're trying to build, and trying to accomplish. But once you leave, Rob, that kind of escapes, doesn't it? And you don't have as much of that anymore.
Isn't that funny how a calendar defines a little bit who we are by the
Hmm.
activities we put into it? And when someone owns a business, the calendar is usually built for them, full of meetings, calls, travels, employees, customers, strategy sessions. And the business creates this structure. After the sale, that structure can disappear almost overnight. And at first, that might feel very wonderful, but eventually, some business owners realize freedom without structure can feel very aimless. So I encourage people to design their calendar before the calendar defines them. What does that mean, filling every hour? What does it mean to be intentional? And what do you want your week to contain? Time with spouse, health, mentoring others, serving on a board, philanthropy, traveling, learning, family dinners, quiet mornings. For many former owners, purpose does not mean creating the intensity of old business, but it means a portfolio of things. Maybe some might be mentoring or giving back or family leadership. Of course, some rest is good, and that can be healthier than immediately replacing the all consuming business calendar with all consuming activities. You just want to be thoughtful about it, I think, as you look at that and be very, very structured.
Well, a lot of the conversation we have is about the family, right? And making sure that you're leaving that legacy and that you're taking care of your family. And that's, most of your clients, Rob, this is a big priority for them. So how does this business sale actually impact the family beyond the obvious of, hey, you got some more money?
Yeah, I will joke, sometimes we sit down and I ask the wife, "Hey, what's it going to look like having your husband home all the time now or vice versa?" When one spouse is so involved in the business and the other spouse usually says, "Man, I'm going to go crazy if they're at home all the time." And that's because the working spouse, the one that's been in the business, has been having their calendar full, just like we talked about. Other times, I sit down with a spouse and they've got a laundry list of things they've been waiting for to be able to do with their spouse and to be able to discover with them and just spend time with them, only to find out that their working spouse that's been in the business doesn't know how to slow down, doesn't know how to not fill up their calendar with things. Children may become aware that the family has more wealth than they realize. And how do you handle that? How do you have that conversation with them? Adult children may wonder what this means for them for an inheritance. And then you got friends and family who may begin asking for help, loan, or investments or gifts. And I always joke on the airplane, they always have that oxygen mask discussion, right? You always want to put yours on before you put on others. But some business owners are so giving, they want to be able to help so many others out that they forget that they got to keep their focus on their own financial future. And so the owner may feel a lot of pressure to be generous while they're trying to protect their family from being entitled or dependent. And there's a lot of issues there. And I think that's where having these discussions and asking questions with the spouses can really help gain some clarity for them. Like, what do we believe this wealth is for? And how do we want to how much do we want our children to know? And what kind of help are we comfortable providing? What kind of help may actually weaken them? Or how do we want to give? How do we want them to be able to live? What kind of model do we want to be to them? So all these questions are important to be able to get the sellers, the couple of the business that owns it, to really think through those family relationships and dynamics before the liquidity event, so they've got some guardrails or framework to be able to work with.
I like that. And I know stewardship's a big word here that you often use too, Rob. And I know, you might think, okay, well, I'm just, it's about wealth management and preserving what we work so hard for. But what's the difference between that and actually stewardship itself?
Yeah, and I think this is where the UVU's perspective really fits in. Money is not just mathematical. It's relational, it's emotional, it's psychological, it's personal. And if we ignore that, we really miss the real opportunity that we have. You talk about that stewardship And I see a lot of business owners that look at that and have that weight that sits on them, like, okay, we built this amazing thing. Now, how do I make sure this really goes towards blessing my family versus maybe being a curse to my family? And we all know those situations where money has turned out to be a curse for a family. We want that to be much more of a blessing by having clarity and direction of where we want to go.
All right, Rob, let's kind of bring this conversation to a close for anyone that's watching that's maybe, probably going to be either close to an exit or sold already, wondering whether or not their wealth is truly aligned with their life and what they want to do. What is the next step? What should they be focused on now?
Yeah, I think that financial clarity and personal direction is really important. I think having those guardrails, and really, you can't do it all on your own. I think there's so much more to be valued in working with someone that specializes in this area, that has those questions, those thought-provoking questions to be able to ask, to help the couple gain clarity to where those ripples are really working for you, and giving you momentum behind the type of life you want to be able to live. So I don't want this to sound too self-serving, but that's really where a discovery call comes in. If you don't find that you have that clarity, you're not getting those questions asked for you on a regular basis, then it might be time for a second opinion and be looking at another professional that could really be there to help you with that clarity.
Yeah, if you're looking for that help, again, go to AxioWM.com. It's in the show description as well. Reach out to Axio Wealth Management, right? If you're getting close to selling, if you've already sold, right, you just really, just this conversation maybe resonated with you a little bit. Please reach out. That's why we do this every single week, while we put out new content, really to help you learn, help you better understand the process, the planning process, why it's so important. But really taking action is the next step, and we hope that you do that. But we appreciate you listening and watching Legacy Beyond Wealth with Rob Shelton at Axio Wealth Management. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ben.